It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your game master and host, Tyler Hapney. I've run hundreds of sessions of Cyberpunk Red and Dungeons and Dragons combined, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on both of those systems. Today, we're going to be continuing our series, looking at the new Night City 2045 sourcebook. In particular, we're going to be looking at the districts of South Night City and the port of Night City. Coming towards the end of our island look, we are slowly coming now towards the end of covering the main island of Night City. We've still got some districts to go, but we're getting there. South Night City. What is South Night City? South Night City is a combat zone, obviously, on the south of the middle island that makes up Night City. This district has been rife with gang conflict and gang wars for decades at this point, and it doesn't really seem to show much sign of stopping anytime soon. Unless, of course, you make a storyline in your campaign, or that's the whole point. But obviously, right now, South Night City is, well, it's probably one of the worst places to live in Night City, I'd say, other than, like, you know, the hot zone or some of the other combat zones you're going to be dealing more with Maelstrom. Probably going to be dealing with plenty of Maelstrom down here in South Night City, to be honest with you. The one who looks over South Night City is Garvin Hackinson. He sat in the mayor's chair for a little bit, and then the bomb went off back in the Fourth Corporate War, and at that point, you know, no longer mayor. He fled. And a decade later, he came back. And, well, he managed to get the city manager position at South Night City. So he's kind of mayor again, but more a councilman now than anything. Hackinson, it says here, is a deal maker. He is very Machiavellian. He's trying his hardest to wheel and deal his way to the top, as well as, you know, around the various gangs and other things of South Night City. He has lost chunks of his territory to different city managers. There is now the Port of Night City and the Reclamation Zone, both of which have spread off from South Night City, and of course have left Hackinson with a little bit less power. Generally, the population you're going to find around South Night City are, well, poor people, down on their luck, gangers, well, edge runners, more than likely. But yeah, you're going to find most problems. In fact, I'm going to argue, if you're in South Night City, there's a very likely chance that walking down the street alone is going to be enough to cause an issue. Because if somebody sees you just strolling along and they're part of a booster gang, or maybe, some bozos or whatever other booster gang seems to be, hiding out in that corner that week, well, they might want to just jump you because it's South Night City. There are no cops. Not really. The NCPD does not step very far into the district unless they have armored vehicles. So, really, honestly, yeah, unless the cops have armored vehicles and, like, a real reason to go into South Night City, there's a good chance that there's going to be plenty of booster gangers just running around doing whatever they feel. Because it's just not worth it to the NCPD to try and pursue everything that's going on back there. This year, it seems that Hackinson likes to revolve his security contracts to whoever is paying him the most. This year, Scythe Security. And it says here that Scythe Security has had a little bit of a quick rise to power. It seems that suddenly, Scythe is getting something big. I mean, it says last year, Scythe's biggest contract was guarding the container mart. Now they're the force of law in the entire district. So it seems like Scythe, there's something going on there between Scythe and Hackinson that's likely quite a bit shady, if I had to guess. What is Scythe Security up to? Who knows? That might be something to find out in a campaign of your own. Very fun time. There is also in South Night City the very noticeable presence of the zoners. They're a whole gang dedicated towards the betterment of life in the combat zone, and specifically South Night City. And typically, they have a lot of issues with the cops. In fact, if I recall, there was a recent story of there being quite a large riot having to do with the zoners. Also, home in South Night City, some of the bigger names you can find are going to be the Kill Crashers, the Reckoners, the Tombstone Preservers, the Enhanced, the Deadwoods, the Kanzaki family, Sinful Adams, which we've mentioned. They work out of a graveyard, and they're all based off of the Adams family. And then, like I mentioned, the Zoners. So what are some cool spots in South Night City? Well, for one, the Boneyard, as I mentioned, the Sinful Adams, their kind of hideout here is up at the top, sort of northern section of South Night City, kind of on the edge of South Night City, and I'm pretty sure that would be Little Europe. There's also the headquarters for Combat Cab here in South Night City. So if you are looking to get into the Combat Cab headquarters for whatever reason, all you've got to do is find them basically directly in the middle of South Night City, not too far away from Deadwood's turf. And yeah, you can have a whole thing with Combat Cab. Personally, I think it'd be very interesting to have a player work for Combat Cab. I think that could lead to some very interesting session intros or even some hooks that go into, maybe a player edge running group down the line. Who knows? Maybe a high level executive is in the back of their Combat Cab. There is, of course, as I mentioned, the Container Mart. It is a shopping plaza created from shipping containers. They have a whole bunch of stuff here. There's Ancestral Threads, which is obviously a salon, is specializing in braiding and caring for natural hair. Choppers, this is a different location than the bar that's in Little Europe. This is a dental office. Yeah, there's a dentist there. There's a bodega, a little corner store. There's Tours that specialize in brain dance tours. Old lady stuff is, well, knitting, crochet, stuff like that. It's old lady stuff. A Panic is it's a salon that takes place of hand and foot needs. And then lastly, there's Slush Slurp. I'm pretty sure you can guess what that is, but yeah, it sells slushies. And for an extra fee, you can have your slushie dusted with Synth Coke, Blue Glass, or Boost. So think about that. You can have cocaine with your ice cream. Great. There is... here's another good one. Duck, Duck, Dead. It seems like this is an event of some kind. It's a deadly bozo funhouse of terror, as they describe it. It is a flash event death maze created by Prankstar the Clown, who is MedTech 6, Tech 4, which means he's pretty good at what he does. He is leader of something called the Sawblade Circus, which we've discussed the bozos here before and the various circuses and what that means. So they take advantage of all these different warehouses and buildings in South Night City and basically turn them into a jigsaw saw death maze. And yeah, generally it seems like a pretty terrible situation to be stuck in. Upon waking up, a contestant finds themselves naked and wearing a locked shock collar. Staying in one place for more than 60 seconds activates that collar, zapping them. Loud music plays as the victim navigates a maze of traps, including blade pits, acid showers, and electrical panels. All the while, they're being chased by something. Drones, maybe with flamethrowers, robot dogs, radio-controlled explosive clown toys, maybe even clowns with chainsaws. Could be fun. Occasionally, they will come across a vendor stocked with supplies, but unfortunately, whatever's dispensed is definitely not what they wanted. And here's the fun end. Here's the fun ending of it. Anyone who makes it to the end must make an impossible choice of kill a child or cut off your own dangly bits. Which, that isn't exactly the choice, but it is a choice of that variety. And if you refuse to make the choice, the shock collar explodes and kills you. Victims who also make the choice are knocked out, and they wake up hours later, but naked without the collar. So there you go. It is that in itself could be a very interesting solo session, or maybe even just a session for some of your guys. The Deadwoods hang out of a place called Fort Sumter. We're not gonna get too deep into the Civil War deal of that. Gunmart is here as well. They have very little security, so just think about that. That's funny. And then Hackinson Tower, obviously, is where Hackinson is. There's a Lazarus Trading Center here. Max Tac has an HQ down here in South Night City. Mind Nuts Lover, Savage Docks, Silverhand Studios, which is, I believe, an apartment building named after Johnny Silverhand. The Slammer is such a cool bar. It's a fight bar. I've had tournaments go on at the Slammer before, and it went out where the sessions went really well. There's a lot here in South Night City, but it is always, of course, important to remember it is one of the most dangerous spots in Night City. There is now moving on to the Port of Night City. This is run by Angela Ng, or NG. I think that's how you pronounce that. They call her Calypso because she is a storm in human form. That is an exact quote. She's a captain, so she's a naval person who seems to really like their kind of pirate slant, I guess would be the best way to describe it. It seems like they are, she's in charge of the harbor, the port, so there you go. Civil citizens here in the port are mostly working class people. And obviously a lot of them work with nomads. There's the Thalas, who really are the more prevalent here among anything else of all the nomads. They have Thalas gunships. They've got everything protecting this port. It is, like I mentioned earlier, it's its own separate district that got broken off from South Night City, pulling power from Hackinson. And this happened in, I believe, the 2030s. So it's somewhat recent. That being said, there's some really interesting locations in the Port of Night City. For one, there's the Amber Room. There is, it's a bar with security code 10. It's guarded by the Consortium. It is, well, I mean, it's very obviously a Russian establishment if we're going by the name of the Amber Room. But it is, sort of a Russian-themed bar proprieted by a fixer named Valya, who is the leader of the Consortium. So obviously she is the head of the sort of Russian mob around here. I think that's a very interesting hook. I think Valya could be a very good character for a campaign down the line. You know, honestly, it's really good to have that kind of connection. And with the Russian mob, you always know. We also have apartments in Dock 13 and a lot of dock communities and people living near the docks. But the big thing to talk about in the Port of Night City is Flotsam, or Flotsam. Flotsam is a web of ships that have been docked out into the Port of Night City. A large cargo ship, just fishing boats, smalling ships, pontoons, whatever you can. It's all jury-rigged together to create a floating city of sorts. It's, you know, everyone's living in these boats, or they've created things on top of these boats to make sort of houses. It's well defended, obviously, by Thalas boats. It doesn't sail or anything, but it is still floating out there on the sort of edge of the Port of Night City. And it's sort of its own town, its own city. It's guarded by the Thalas. There's no official like law or anything. In fact, I don't even think Night City itself has much say over what goes on in Flotsam. So it serves as a very interesting place to go for those sort of back alley kind of black market sort of deals that your players are very likely to wind up in. There is the main port, of course, and the other ports, and the many different quays will sort of differentiate between what exactly comes in and doesn't come out. A lot of this is to do with the various ports and other things. As for the last thing we're going to cover, I'd like to discuss Rusty's Dive Shack. Because that's another location that came out of either one of the DLCs or Black Chrome. But Rusty's Dive Shack is a really cool place. It is a diver bar. It's full of sailors who often will go out and sail and dive for scrap, which they then sell to Rusty at Rusty's Dive Shack. Rusty sells genuine shark liver oil for €10. There is a medtech here named Sweetheart who has a tattoo parlor on the side of Rusty's Dive Shack. So that is also a thing you can do. Get yourself some old naval style tattoos. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, Rusty's Dive Shack in the past I've used as a place where you can go meet sailors and divers and people who go under the ocean. But also, it's a little rough and tumble kind of dive bar. It's not exactly uncommon for there to maybe be a few bar fights here at Rusty's Dive Shack, or for people to be passing through on their way to flotsam. So that's just something to consider if you're ever going to be using Rusty's Dive Shack in your campaign. That hey, it's a dive. And a lot of people in there are likely either just hanging out because they're old crusty sailors and that's just where they go, or maybe they're looking to get a trip over to Flotsam, or they're sort of between trips to Flotsam. Either way, it can kind of connect. It can connect. So let's talk about our metaphorical monster of the week. And we mentioned Valya. So let's talk about Valya and who Valya is. Valya is, she's a partier. She was apparently quite a big part of the Moscow party scene before she just kind of vanished from the city entirely. Most at the time assumed that she was murdered by her dad, but when it turned out that she had been embezzling and skimming money from the fatherly account. However, 5 years later, she just appeared in Night City as the head of the Bratva's new operation in the Pacifica Confederation, known obviously as the Consortium. So, in those 5 years, she must have made some deal with the Bratva and has been able to assert herself into a position of power, enough of a position of power where she's running bars in Night City, at least. She in particular, seems to be maintaining relations explicitly with Savoil and Zarafa, both of which, of course, are Russian-based companies. Well, Zarafa might be African. I don't remember Zarafa, but Savoil, obviously, definitely Russian, so is very, very connected to anything coming out of the Soviet Union at the time, or the new Soviet Union, or you get the idea. It is said that Valya's people are more loyal to her than they are to the Consortium or the Bratva. Then, if that is the case, it could very well be an issue down the line, especially with her father, who, I'm going to guess, it seems to me like this whole situation, it almost seems like Valya it was discovered that she was skimming money and she could have died, but instead she vanished for 5 years and reappeared in Night City, a completely different country than Russia, keep in mind, with a position of power within what I can only assume to be her father's organization. To me, that reads of somebody who was punished and then sent sort of away, not in exile, but in a sense of being, hey, go over here for a really long time so we don't have to worry about you and go handle business, and we're going to keep our guys on you to keep you monitored. But if the guys are now more loyal to Valya and that's discovered by the Bratva, it's very likely going to cause an issue. And that could be an entire source of conflict for a campaign or just one session on its own. A sort of potential conflict between the Bratva and Valya, who's are obviously trying to start her own thing with the Consortium and is likely a well-respected gang leader in the area. Well, I mean, maybe she'd push back against the Bratva who put her there. Maybe she's plotting something. Who knows? But yeah, Valya to me is an interesting character to just kind of have left out on the table, with just maybe a paragraph or two of explanation of who she is and what she's doing. I think there's a lot of character that could be dug into there, and potentially stories that could be construed from just this one single paragraph. Who knows? But yeah, that is South Night City and the Port of Night City. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're probably going to go back to Dungeons and Dragons. I know there was a new Vampire the Masquerade extension for Dungeons and Dragons where they added a bunch of clans from Vampire the Masquerade into D&D. I think that's cool in a sense. I think you could just play Vampire. But at the end of the day, if people want to have their vampires in D&D, then, more power to them. I'll probably cover that if I can get my hands on it. Other than that, I'll be seeing you next week. Thank you so much for listening to Dungeons and Dystopias.